Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Talked to a friend of mine that covers college football nationally, and he was just kind of picking my brain on, what to take from this Auburn game. And he's like, man, when I went back and watched it, the offensive line was impressive, but he's like, I think it starts with Connor Lew. And this is a guy that we all thought would be a top center in all of college football. And he was a top center in all of college football against Baylor. I think they did a great job. He did a great job with the calls, with the recognition. And then over the course of 60 minutes, the interior offensive line, of course, led by Connor Lew, they got push consistently. And I think that's something that is, how many times have we talked somebody up and they don't always deliver over the last, half decade at Auburn? Connor Lew continues to dominate as one of the best centers in college football. And I've done like 4 or 5 shows talking about this game, and I haven't mentioned Connor Lew yet, and that's a shame. That's a shame on my part.
Yeah, the one thing, whenever Auburn, and it didn't feel like it was that often, but whenever Auburn got into that situation where I needed to see them convert in short yardage, my first thought was get behind Connor Lew and go get those yards. And typically that's not a thing you think of for centers. It's, maybe a guard, get behind Jeremiah Wright and let him make a hole. But like Connor Lew, and it's not just, it's everything. It's setting protections. It is coordinating with those guards. To your point, the interior offensive line had a really great day. I think Wright, Miller, Lew all combined for perfect, no pressures allowed, all that kind of stuff, because he's just getting everybody set up and he's getting everybody in the right place, and they all work well together. Him, Too Tall, Connor are just fantastic. And I feel really good about the idea of having an experienced guy, one of the most talented. If you're going to have one really, really good offensive lineman, a lot of people think it should be your tackle for pass blocking. Yeah. I think it needs to be your center to set protections, because how are you going to impact the passing game in 2025? You're going to confuse the offensive line, confuse the quarterback, and manufacture pressure using your amazing athletes. And Connor Lew is just really good at recognizing what teams are trying to do and setting the appropriate protection.
Yeah, and there were some moving pieces on the interior. Like Dylan Wade there were 70 offensive snaps for Auburn on Friday night. And Dylan Wade played 57 of them at left guard. Jeremiah Wright played 12 of them, and then Too Tall played 1 of them, and then Too Tall played 18 at right guard, and Jeremiah Wright played 52 at right guard. So there was some movement happening around in there. Your tackles were solid, but Auburn had 4 players that played every single offensive snap: Jackson Arnold, Connor Lew, Xavier Chaplin, and Mason Murphy. So your center and your tackles were steady. Obviously, you're going to keep your quarterback in because we didn't run any packages. How great was that? That was awesome. That was awesome.
We didn't see 4 quarterbacks.
No, we did not. We did not. And look, I think Jeremiah Wright kind of flew under the radar too. I mean, a guy who played solid at both sides of the line, and all offseason we talked about Connor because he, got all this preseason praise. It's well deserved. And we talked about these new tackles. And then, even Dylan Wade and his versatility. And Jeremiah Wright was a guy we didn't really talk about that much. And I think the fact that he can kind of swing and play both ways or on both sides is a big deal. And so I thought that was pretty important.
Yeah. And just the depth in there, being that really you've got 4 guys that are starting caliber between your guards and your center. When you factor in Too Tall stepping in, Dylan Wade handling some stuff at guard. You feel really good about, I think recently, ever since you restructured and reinforced the offensive line through the transfer portal, shout out Hugh Freeze, because the first 2 guys before him didn't do it. You had starters, but you didn't have enough depth if something were to happen. And you got lucky, Connor Lew stepped into the lineup partway through his freshman year, partly because he was better, partly because you had some injuries and things. But
yeah,
I feel like right now you have enough depth where, knock on wood, if you were to lose somebody, you can still put out 5 starters. Although I do worry about Connor Lew's just so important to this unit that if he were to go down, you're in trouble. But I think that's a lot of teams. That's a big deal.
But we saw 6 offensive linemen like really play, which is kind of what we talked about. You know, Too Tall being that 6th guy, and that's what we saw. And then just quickly on the defense, a guy that I haven't spent a ton of time talking about, but I liked his tape when I've kind of looked at it closer, and then also just looked at the PFF stuff. But Xavier Atkins played way more than I was expecting him to. He played 51 snaps. Auburn played 79 snaps defensively. And I thought Xavier Atkins was a much larger part of Auburn's defense than I expected him to be. And so I think some of that has to do with talent recognition, because like he was super athletic and a guy that had traits that you wanted. And it seemed like he kind of got hopped in the depth chart at LSU, and DJ Durkin, being a linebacker guy, said, no, you have a spot here if you want it. They got him here. And I expected this to be a guy that took longer to get to what we saw Friday, and he's already there. And so I think it's probably a joint effort, right? Xavier Atkins putting in the work and developing, and also, you know, Auburn staff putting him in a situation to succeed. But Xavier Atkins, a guy that I was kind of lower on than most people throughout the offseason, I wanted to give him props. I think he flew under the radar a little bit Friday.
He really stood out in run defense to me.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like the entire linebacking group kind of as a whole struggled when it came to coverage at times, but Atkins just getting down, making stops. I think PFF had him with 4 stops, which is, you know, stopping the ball carrier certain percentage of the yards for a first down, whatever. Just being able to, I think he only missed 1 tackle. Just being able to get into the play and make the play. I feel like a lot of Auburn's linebackers in the past have been able to get into position, but not necessarily able to close the deal. And then you've had some guys who were, you know, not as athletic or not as good with getting into position. I feel like he was able to do both, right? He had the athleticism to beat a block, slip around a defender, slip around a blocker, and then actually finish the tackle and make the stop. And that's just not something we've had a ton of.
Yeah.
And if he's able to play a ton and be this guy all year, it maybe makes you feel a little bit better about the linebacker room, because you know, like, okay, you expected Woodard to play a lot. You expected Riddick to play a lot. You expected Melendez maybe to play a lot, depending on the packages and things. If he can be one of the guys in the linebacker room, makes you feel better about, okay, maybe that's not the weakest link in the defense like we thought it was.
Yeah, I think the depth is there. And there's different guys that stepped up doing different things. So I think that's great. I think that's great. So Connor Lew, Xavier Atkins, giving them some love for sure.